Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indy Comics Explained. And yet again, I brought another fantastic group of independent comic book creators. And let me tell you something. Please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let everybody know we're here. And don't forget, the Oswald Chronicles, currently on Kickstarter. For the first 45 backers, we get these two sticker things. You know, one was a sticker set, one was this little glitter sticker Oswald thing. It's kind of cool. So without further ado, let's bring on the people. This guy,
the people, me, the people.
Yes.
What is up, Streamland? What's going on? I am JD Rosario from Unstoppable Comics. Been publishing comic books for over 16 years now. Yay! I love that. Let me get a little crowd reaction in. Happy to be talking to other creators tonight about what they've been doing and how they've been lasting so long.
All right, cool. Very nice, very nice. And let's bring on our co-host.
Hello. How you doing, party people? This is Damion Waldbrunn, Omniverse Link, creator of Realm RX, talking here tonight about comic books and life.
All right, cool.
That's all I got.
That's all you got. All right.
Hi, my name is Dave, and I'm an alcohol. Oh, wrong group. Dave from Lakeshore Comics. I've got Travis and Ailer going to be popping in here too, my editor and artist. Travis, co-writer and editor. Happy to talk to you guys.
Very cool.
Cool.
Hello. This is Chris Brimmage. I am the author of Mandrill PI and just super excited to be here and talk comics.
Hi, I'm Ailer. I'm the artist for Broken Trident, and I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Hey, I'm Travis. I am the co-writer and editor for Lakeshore Comics and Broken Trident, and thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Scott Harris King. I am from Crimebuster Comics, which is just me, so I'm all of Crimebuster Comics, and I'm here to talk about my new fantasy comic quests and talk about Indy Comics.
Nice. I want one person to show up in the intro and say, "Yeah, I'm not really happy to be here." You know, I just.
Well, you know,
what's up, brother? You're like, yeah, I got dragged into doing this by one of the guys on the team. You know,
yeah, I know. But don't worry about it. You know what happened? What would happen to that person? Same thing happened to Damion. So you know.
Oh man, poor guy. Buy,
yeah, I don't know.
guys, and everybody who's watching, please buy Damien's books so that way he can pay for his internet connection to be sped up just a little bit more, so he can chill with us. He's a good dude, man. We love his company.
Yep. I don't know what happened. He just disappeared. Oh. Anyway, gentlemen, so let's get down to brass tacks. You know, I put up these show questions, so I got to just go for it. How do we as indie creators convince retailers that we're the future, and are we even the future that they want? Right? So that's the subtext of that question, because it's interesting because, you know, we know how retailers are. We've dealt with them in the past, right? All of us, I'm sure, have our own individual little stories, right? So, Scott, let's start with you. Do you think we can convince retailers that we're the future?
So my answer might be a little bit different from everyone else's, but when you say retailer, I guess it depends on what retailers we're talking about, because I'm interested in getting like my trades and stuff into bookstores and that sort of thing. But as far as the direct market and your traditional comic book retailers, I'm actually not interested in being their next thing. I am kind of soured on the whole, you know, local comic shop direct market scene. And so for me, that's a battle that I actually decided not to do. I think rather than us being their future, I think we're our own future and they're being left behind right now.
Okay. You know what? That's fair. That's fair. I see merit in that. But yeah, that's fair. All right. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would give a thought relatively similar to Scott, but I think different execution. So I think it depends on what retailer you're talking about. So I think the traditional brick and mortar comic stores, I do think that we should see one another as each other's futures, because we are, both creating new pieces to go into different comic stores and you know, we're all working our way up through the comic book ladder to try and get a bigger and bigger audience that we could bring into them. I'd say the real question is more around distributor. So like, what is are we the future of which distributor, and vice versa? I think that would be the question that I would direct this toward, because is Diamond the way to go for us in the future as we want to get into traditional brick and mortar retailers? And I think that's a deep conversation as well. So maybe it's a side conversation, but I would just answer your question without answering it. So
okay, that's fair. Ailer,
in my argument, I guess.
Yeah, right now, because actually, I think we have a lot of future when it comes to like online stuff. Like, what do you call this? Online platforms. Yeah, we just got our comic book with Block Tunes, and right now we'll be I'll probably having a meeting later, like with Voice.me. They are also an online platform for comic books. So yeah, aside from doing like retailers, if you could get your comic book as many like online platforms, and it would increase like visibility, and yeah, it would help out a lot of their comic.
Okay, that's fair. All right, cool. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, basically just to build on what Ailer said, and also what Chris and Scott said, there's a lot to be said about it being a kind of new market right now. Yeah. So you're looking at a lot of people are ordering this stuff online. They're doing a lot of, I mean, we have the Kickstarter, et cetera, but there's a huge online market. But I think if you're really going to want to appeal to your retailers, I mean, what we've done we've just gone local. You know, like we've appealed to a lot of the retailers in Minnesota that are nearby, and we've had a good reception. We have our books out there and they are selling. Are they selling at an exponential rate? Well, not really. We only have #1 out there, but I guess my attitude on it is, if it's a brick and mortar retailer and we're in the Kickstarter market, our best bet on brick and mortar is to stay local. I would be really interested in hearing anybody else's perspective on that, though, because if there's a way to make sure that your book gets out there in the brick and mortars, we want that. But also, based on what everybody else is saying, I mean, it's a totally new market. I mean, most of it is online now.
Yeah, fair enough. Dave, what are you thinking?
It's tough because there's the people that go to the brick and mortar stores. They want Flash, they want Wolverine, they want Superman and Batman, you know. And I can say that before I got into the indie comics scene, creating them, if I went into a local comic shop, I wasn't looking at independent comics. Like if I saw them, I'd just glance right by them. And now that I know how good they are, my perspective has changed. And I think, you know, to kind of answer the question of, are we the future? If you could convince these readers to like show them how original these stories are, because I've pretty much stopped reading X-Men, The Flash, all that stuff, because it's just the same shit over and over again. It's they reboot and reboot and reboot, and there's a #1 every 2 years, and how often can you recycle these origin stories, and how often can you recycle Flash fighting Captain Cold or whatever, you know, before it gets old? So I think that we should be the future. I don't think we are, but I think we should.
We should be, yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Mr. Rosario.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, man, this is huge. Yeah. Are we the future? Of course we're the future, because we are bringing in new talent, right, with collaborators that are not getting into the bigger companies elsewhere. So we're ushering new talent. That's a future thing. Why would retailers want this? Well, I come from New York, where there's a pizzeria on almost every corner. Okay, and if that was the case, where with that comic book thinking, the big two are the only ones good at doing superheroes, why should I do it? You apply that, there wouldn't be a pizzeria on almost every corner, right? You gotta get it out there, and you gotta let the market decide, because if you don't, you're cutting yourself off to a possible revenue stream that you may not have been thinking about grabbing dollars from before. You don't. We're Indie Comics. We scrap for every penny that's out there. And to close the door to a way to get another couple pennies in your pocket, if you know how to run your books and understand business, X, Y, Z, so on and so forth, right? You're keeping yourself from creating more content down the line, because we need that money to pay the folks. So, yeah, are we the future? Yeah, we're the future. How are we going to make them find out that we are the future? How are they going to? We got to show we're going to sell in their stores, right? So there's an extra concerted effort that needs to be done between ourselves and our collaborators who are working on the projects to move those books when it's out there. It's a totally different game than the crowdfunding system that we are thriving in right now, right? But again, it is a source of revenue that we cannot, if we want to have longevity, keep ourselves away from.
Okay, I want to show some of these replies from the chat, because I think they're interesting.
Yeah.
Daphne says local comic book shops rather bury themselves in Funko Pops than deal with hundreds of unstable individual indie companies and comics they don't know how to sell. Right. And that is a problem, because they don't know how to sell. They're so accustomed to just putting something on a rack. They don't have to sell it. It sells itself. Superman sells itself. Spider-Man sells itself. Sometimes you'll have a coworker who's really enthusiastic, and they'll help sell these books. But for the most part, those things sell themselves. So these people are not really sellers, right? They're just, a middleman that they'll just come in, they'll just put your book on the shelf. Well, good luck to you, buddy. And that's really what they're doing. The most successful shops have sellers in them.
Correct.
Midtown Comic.
Sorry, I just have to jump in real quick. We've had some really good luck in Minnesota, because Minnesota's big on marketing made in Minnesota or any local creators. And it's not like we've done huge numbers at any comic book shop, but whenever they have a section that says local creators, we seem to see our books sell 2 to 1 from the places that don't have that.
Right. And our local shop, Pulp Comics and Games in Mankato, Minnesota, shout out to them. They push our book, but I know them, they're Facebook friends of mine. I know them. I've got to know them from going in their shop, but they know how to sell it. They push it. But all the other, some of the other shops in Minnesota did pretty good, but the ones that know us know how to sell it. And I feel like that's, like you said, that's the key. If they know how to, they know who's coming in their store and go, hey,
that's the key.
That's
the key, Dave. Yes, they know their customer base. Right. So it's almost like a comic book sommelier, right? They know what's on their racks, and they know their customers well enough to say, all right, Bobby, Jimmy, and Janet are going to buy this book. Freddie, Frida, and Franny are going to buy this book, right? So they'll know to pick those books up. But we need to supply them with the information of what those books are about so they can do their job, right? So it's that synergy of business. And if you don't, then you may not be there long, right? You may not be doing this long.
Paul says signings at local comic shops is the way to go.
Okay.
Good for you, Paul. Grande says you might think too much like Americans. Every time I get a chance to go to a comic store, I look for the weird stuff, not what I can find on Amazon. That's a very interesting point. Well, you understand? If you can find it on Amazon or some other website, DCBS or any of these websites, why even in the shop, right? When you can buy it at a discount at Amazon. Right. It's a very interesting, concept.
If I could touch on Granda's comment for a second, because I know him, he's one of my collaborators. And the thing is, he is from Colombia. In Colombia, they are only independent market books.
Right.
So they've come up with that system of looking for what's different, right? Not what's being fed to them.
Mm-hmm. Paul says it's like a new product at the grocery store. You demo it at the LCS. Why do you want it? Because you make an event for them, bring in new customers. There you go. So I guess that's us going to a local comic stores. All right. All right. I think that's cool. Jay, you got a question?
Yeah, so it's along these lines, and Scott brought this up a second ago, that he, doesn't have it's not part of his plan to do shops. So, and that's understandable because I was at that point. So for the rest of the crew that's here, right? Why wouldn't you devote the time to getting into shops?
All right. Chris, you're up.
Yeah, so I think for me, it is part of my plan. I have not devoted as much time as I would like to thus far because I haven't had the time, and B, I'm trying to build up a bit more of an audience so that then whenever I start pushing it in local shops, I'll be able to bring more people with me rather than, like almost asking for the favor of bringing it in.
Okay.
And I think on the note of turning, it's almost like any other industry where the idea has to be, you have to turn the people that work there into an ambassador for your brand or for your book. And so it's you have to make it both as easy as possible, and you have to get them excited about it in order to get them to go through the effort to sell you over rando Superman comic on the shelf. And so I think a lot of it is about the strategy behind that and how do you set yourself apart, also not only from the traditional superhero comics on the shelf, but also from the other indie comics on the shelf. So like, what's your unique hook that gets them, just super excited? And like I said, I've got it in my strategy long term, but it's not something I've threaded the needle yet, just because of time.
Fair enough. Ailer, what are your thoughts?
I think for me it's like, when it comes to like retailers, like, because we don't have like too many like comic book stores here in the Philippines. Like, if you want to buy like a comic book store, you'd have to be in big cities like here in Manila, and probably like Cebu or something. So yeah, you'd have to do really good in advertising it with like the community here, the comic book reading community. So like, you'd have to be really in events and point them to the right direction where they could buy physical comic books. And so I guess the best strategy is like, you'd have to have a good like online presence and give them directions to where they can find these books. Because we just in a con yesterday, and I showed them our comic book, the Broken Trident, and they were asking where they could like purchase it, like the physical copies. Because I think every time there's an event, or like a big event, it's good to be there, because the mentality of people going there is like, I want to spend my money on stuffs right now. So if you're there, you could build up on that hype, and you could sell them the comic book. Or I think the key is like selling those first issues. Once you get them to read the first issue, if they like it, they most likely would ask for more. So, so yeah. So I think it's like when it comes to success in retailers, the best strategy, I guess, like have an ecosystem of market. So.
All right, cool. Travis, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with that. I think if you're going to market to any, you're looking at brick and mortar, if you're going to market to brick and mortar, it's just like Ailer said, having something like an ecosystem. And like, it's so funny to bring Ailer in on all this. I mean, you know, in the Philippines, it's a totally different story than what we're dealing with here in the States. Mm-hmm. But he's exactly right. I mean, having an ecosystem out there that basically is your way of saying word of mouth. But word of mouth now is a totally different game when you're talking about that online field. That doesn't negate the importance of what you're doing inside the store. But again, going back and making sure that the people in the store that you're selling your book to know what the book is. And we've had luck with that. I don't know how it would work outside of our small little network, but, you know, getting people to actually look at what you've got out there and have them say, hey, you should look at this. I mean, that's a very, very good point.
Oh yeah, I mentioned something to like Dave last meeting we had, like if we could have on our pages, like books itself, on the books itself, like what stores they could find our
what
stuffs.
Online stores.
Yeah, what online stores they could find our stuffs, and maybe we could like add what physical stores they could find our stuffs as well. Because you know, who knows who could read that first book? Maybe a friend could read it and like, yeah, I want some of this too, where I could buy it. But they could flip the page and they could see list of stores, something they could.
Well, I think what would be interesting for you guys, especially here's something for you to think about, Ailer, is if you have a POD system in the Philippines, where you may be able to upload your files and people can order from that POD system in the Philippines. So they're getting distributed from the Philippines to that market.
We talked about that. Me and Ailer,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That might be something you guys, right? Because then Ailer could promote it. All of you guys would benefit from it. You know, I think that would be interesting, you know, for you guys. But Dave, what are your thoughts on it?
I kind of go back to what Chris said. Like it's hard to. We're not in Diamond, you know, and so it's hard to pound the pavement and get to all these stores. And I'm fortunate that I can. I travel for work, so I've got through a lot of comic shops in Minnesota. I've got to Iowa. I've got to Wisconsin because of my traveling for work, and I've only ever had one comic shop say no. Like every other one has let us in there. But it kind of circles back to what we were saying before. Like, you know, if whether you're in there or not is getting in the door is half the battle. If they don't know your stuff, if they don't know what they're selling. And I think that's something that we could probably do a little bit better job of, is like even maybe printing out a little synopsis to give to them so they know how to sell it and what market they should be pushing the book to.
Yeah, I forgot what company used to do that. They used to send out little cards that you could put in front of the comic, and they would. I don't know if it was a CrossGen, or maybe even Valiant was doing that for a while. And you know, they would send out these little cards that you would put in front of the comic, and then they would, you know, have a little synopsis. So just to give everybody an idea of what's going on. I mean, Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, just to expand on what I said earlier. So I live outside of Boston, and here we're blessed. We have like lots of conventions going on all the time. There's, you know, within an hour drive of me, there's probably at least 50 comic book stores. There's comic stores everywhere, and there's a huge like independent comics community. We have the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo is like one of the big, you know, indie conventions. And what I've found as a result is a lot of it has to do with the education of the readers. So there's certain events you go to and certain stores you go to where they support indie books, and they're used to getting stuff that aren't mainstream, and they're willing to pay a little bit more for it because it's like personal, you know, personal creator's vision. But I go to other stores sometimes and they're very locked in. Like, you know, I had one store where they said, no, we don't do any, you know, we won't take any, you know, independent, self-published people, because our readers, they have to come out on a monthly basis. It has to be at a $5 price point. So I've been turned away from a few places talking to them about it because of that. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I think going to shows helps a lot with, finding your local sort of, community that can support you. But I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution for indie creators in terms of getting into LCSs. I don't see right now Diamond or other big distributors really being useful. I think it has to be like on a store-by-store basis, because, again, the stores around me are so different. If I get my book in store A, it's never going to sell anything. But if I can get into store B, it's going to do really well. So there's a lot of legwork in terms of just, finding where your support is, and building that sort of, readership that's asking for your stuff. Once they've seen you at a few different shows. I've been to a lot of shows now, and sometimes I go to shows and they recognize me now, whereas 3 years ago they wouldn't have. So that makes it a lot easier.
All right, cool. All right, I'm gonna put up some of these comments because we have some naysayers out there.
Who's this Daphne person? She this unicorn person keeps popping up here with these wild, outlandish comments. Oh my gosh!
Here we go. Having my comic banned from Diamond for years had me learning to not need shops, and my ROI is higher on crowdfunding than wasting my time trying to convince retailers to buy a few copies. Despite the fact we do sell to a couple of retailers on the side. William Samuel Quinton says, contact Adam Watson of Comics Mainstream Distribution. He'll get your titles into shops, bookstores, or spinner racks in a variety of retail locations. This is true. Adam is awesome. Daphne says, too many creators treat being in comic shops more like a fetish than an actual viable sales strategy. Spend your time and effort building an audience you control, or you can control. Create an audience that follows you, and you don't need comic book shops to act as glorified middlemen. Some people are just angry. I don't know.
Yeah, that Daphne person's got hate.
Some people are just angry.
I think
says
it has to be like part of your strategy and not your entire strategy to get
correct.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
It reflects what all of us are saying.
Correct.
Yeah. You need the online presence to redirect your readers to the point of sales and not depend on your local audience. That's true. John says, how is the content of your books different from mainstream comics? That's also important. How is the content of your book? Okay, he repeated himself. And then we have Rhonda says, of Diamond wants to keep being on the comic distribution business, they should be open to take small publishers. Maybe not take every single creator one by one, but how about getting together and offering Diamond several times if they had come from a single publisher? Yeah, I mean, all right. Why should stores take a chance on your material? And Sam says, have many sales channels as possible to generate the largest number of sales possible. Yes. I agree with that.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Damion made it back.
Double D. Mr. Green Damion.
Yes.
Should have been on for that Funko Pop conversation earlier.
Yeah.
Great. Everybody can hear me? Everything's good?
Yes. Everything's good.
Okay, just making sure.
I think the
Everybody
reboot,
pause.
the reboot helped you out.
Let's freeze our screens.
That is not funny. Stop it.
So Damion, what do you? I don't know if you heard the question.
I didn't.
So Jay, ask.
Fucking remember. I winged this, bro. That came off the top of my head. This makes off the comment that's not mentioned.
Was it something like that?
You gotta rewind this. Get off the table or something here, bro.
I was already there.
Man.
I was in the ether floating around. The AI bots were all around me.
Exactly. Ask me to write things down. Get out of here.
So Jay.
I knew I should have taken a shot.
Ask him the damn question.
Oh my God! All right, something about why wouldn't you want to be in a comic shop? There we go. Something along those lines.
I don't see the point anymore.
Oh, okay.
I hate to say it, but I gotta agree with Daphne. Like, I mean, I think she's proven just by her success that
Yes.
you know it can be done without any of that mess. And you know, until Diamond, you know, breathes their last, which may be sooner rather than later.
We don't know.
Well,
We don't know.
I mean, they gotta do
We don't
something.
know.
They gotta do something.
Right.
I mean, if they
But
don't
for
start,
you and your product.
everyone here is like, you know, pimping their products, and
Right.
the local comic book shop isn't doing anything to help us. It's more of like a hindrance, even, because we've got to prove and we've got to do and we got to, which is all stuff you should do. But you know, to have to reprove every door you walk into, to reprove yourself and reprove yourself and reprove yourself, it gets old. And
It's tiring, right?
Well, and
Yes.
like
and if it's something you want, I mean, I totally see going for it if it's something you want to do. I mean, I've done it. I've been in shops. I've been in local shops here in Louisville. I've sold out, you know, every time I've had books in a shop. But
where's
I never gained any.
Where's Louisville? Is that like from the
Louisville.
French thing? Is that like is that Whoville?
The Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness. Louisville, the Heart of Darkness. Kentucky.
Kentucky. Okay.
We wear shoes and don't look at our shoes.
Louisville.
Louis,
Oh,
like King Louis.
don't do
Chicago
that.
pizza is better.
Don't say that.
I'll bring back the old fights. Let's do it. But yeah, I mean, if it's something you want to do, absolutely go for it. If you think it's going to help, go for it. If you have a local following, then yeah, you know, you could maybe do a signing in a shop, or if you get into, you know, something a little more mainstream, if that's your thing, then sure. But as like a rule for me, I'm not looking forward to it. Like it's not something I'm shooting for, because I feel like, you know, getting it in people's hands is more important than getting it on a rack where it may sit forever. You know.
That's fair. For myself, let me add a little context to Daphne's statements.
Okay.
Being as I was there,
Almost as if you know this Daphne person personally.
Exactly. Yes. So back in the day, we were selling Tall Tales through Diamond, through the catalog, doing all that jazz. Like I said, when we started, 13, 14 distributors, blah blah blah. We had a whole bunch of people. It was great back then. And then Diamond, you know, ended up being the only game in town, and not so great. Our sales just weren't meeting their minimums, so they ended up cutting us off. And then we just ended up just at conventions, selling books at conventions, and we did very well at conventions for a long time. And then we discovered Kickstarter, and this is where we're at now. Right now, I'm back in the process of seriously thinking of going through the whole Diamond process again. Right. I have a little bit more hope in my heart because Lunar is there, and then I understand. Was it Universal?
Universal's coming up.
Coming up next year.
Excuse me. Yeah,
they're coming down from Canada, so that's another big distributor. There's Adam Watson, and there's a couple other smaller companies doing this sort of thing. So you know, there's hope, I think, in the market, right? So I think there's a chance. The only real problem that I see is not so much the distributors, is the fact that we don't have enough retailers that are actual comic book stores. That, I think, is the real issue. I've been hearing way too many stories of retailers that had a comic book shop that then started selling Funko Pops, that then started selling Magic the Gathering, and then the comic portion of the shop just kept getting smaller and smaller because, you know, they're all paying for, you know, that space. So that space needs to make money. So, and the comics just make less and less money. So they give it up further and further to role-playing games and all these other things. And I mean, I think that's the bigger issue, is that we don't have as many comic shops. Not so much, I mean, the distribution point part of it is important, but I think the real important part is us trying to get back those comic shops. And how do we reverse that trend, right? How do we get readers back? Because when I started in 92, 93, there were, I don't know, 12,000 comic shops. Now we're down to 1,200. I mean, how do you lose 90% of a market? You know, I mean, the stewardship behind that was just crappy. And that could be blamed on Diamond. That could be blamed on Marvel. That could be blamed on Image. A whole bunch of different factors. I mean, a whole bunch of different factors are to blame for that. And not all of it just Diamond or Marvel or DC. You know, there's just a slew of reasons this occurred. And I mean, yeah, but it's trying to get back those stores. How do we get that back, right? How do we get back those readers? We're getting a portion of them back, I think, through crowdfunding, but there's still, literally hundreds of thousands of people who are former readers who we no longer have. And how do we reach those people? How do we bring them back? And I think that's the real issue. Can we get them back? How do we get them back? So anyway, Jay, all up to you, brother.
Yeah. So there's so many different things I want to say. I'm trying to formulate it where I sound coherent and not like somebody shouting at clouds. But
go ahead, old man.
All right, somebody like me, who's coming up with a programming schedule where I've got a lot of books to release. There's just too many for me to do on crowdfunding and get everything out on time, right? And then the whole cycle of, for me, 1 month of promotion, 1 month of fulfillment, 1 month of promotion, 1 month of fulfillment. It's like, right, that's a best case scenario. So that's, if I'm lucky, I'm getting out 6 books a year, and I try to do that, and that's not happening for me right now, right? Another element to look at is if you look at a shop as something that's called top of the funnel, right? And top of the funnel is customers' first interaction with your product. The chances for people to interact with your book at a shop is a hell of a lot more than interacting with your book on crowdfunding, right? I know people hate this word, competing, right? But all of us here are trying to get eyes on our product. So whether you like it or not, we are competing with each other just to get eyes. Forget about dollars or whatever, right? We're trying to get attention for our books. So if we can get into shops and get more attention on our books, where we can bring customers from the top of the funnel back down to our core setup, right, where we can sell direct to customer, then why wouldn't you take the chance on doing it? But if you're running lean and you're a one-person show, I get that too. I totally get that. And like Scott said earlier, you may not have the time. All right, Dave, you said you travel a lot. You're lucky you're able to hit those shops, but it's still within a certain circuit, right? I mean, Ailer, I don't have any books in the Philippines, right? How many people have books 1,000 miles from when they're at right now, right? No, you're right. How many? 500 miles. Right? How many 100 miles from where they're at right now? Okay. Okay. Right. Travis, I don't know. You don't count you and David together there, bro.
Well, I mean, we're brothers and it's the same comic, so we raised hands at the same time.
But that's what I'm trying to get at is, right, even though we're on social, even though we're on the internet, we're still local. Right? We still have a bubble around us. And if we want to get out of that bubble, we have to try to do different things that we haven't done before. But again, if you're running lean, I get it. You're spinning so many plates during the day. You don't have the time to check in with 1,800, 1,500, 1,000, 100 shops in a month to move your product, right? And the other thing is we have to relearn how to sell our books. We're still learning how to sell our books right now through crowdfunding. If we're getting into shops, we got to figure out how to sell our books in a week, right? And that comes with a lot of money, either in promotion or a lot of money learning from all the plates that you've dropped where you're trying to figure this out. And a lot of people aren't either A, set up for that, or B, don't want to spend that money. They don't want to take that risk. And that's understandable too. So what I was bringing up, the question is not there's a right or wrong answer. It's just, okay, what's your process like? Why would you or why wouldn't you? Because I'm sure there's people watching this right now that may take either umbrage with some of the things that we're saying, or may take inspiration with some of the things that we're saying and try something else out or reel back on something that they were thinking about doing. Right? That's why we're all doing this. Right? This is our school right now. We're learning from each other.
Yeah.
Now, Paul says something interesting here.
Okay.
Let it come up.
How do we get back those readers? Aim for new ones, teenage. Okay. Yeah, because we're getting old. Look, I got I'm getting long in the tooth, right? How many people how many Gen Xers are going to keep buying books?
Right.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing about that, though, is I do agree we do need to get teenagers, but I also think we do not need to forget about Gen Xers or older millennials or whatever age group you're in, because the thing is people are living longer, right? And people are in their dotage or whatever spending money. They're still spending money. Everybody here still spends money. I still collect comics. I don't know how. I spend probably way more than I should on my comic books every month than I should, but I do it anyway. Why? Because I enjoy it, right? I don't know how many of you guys are doing that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be comics. It could be DVDs, books, whatever. Whatever it is that's your thing. Pops, right, Damion?
Right. You know what? I want to comment on this Daphne person. I want to say something about that. And this Daphne person, I don't know who this person is. No, but here's the thing, right? It's top of the funnel is not its designation, its proper designation. It's classification, right? So it's the first interaction, one of many. First interaction. Top of the funnel could be doing a signing somewhere, could be at a convention, could be in a podcast live stream like this, right? Top of the funnel is just a phrase for the first interaction a potential customer has with either you or your product. And how do you bring them back down so that way they find out about the rest of your product and become one of your core base? Right. So that's what that is. It's that classification. It's one of the elements in the top of the funnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could just jump in for a second, I just wanted to say, at the beginning, I said I feel like we're the future of comics, and when you're talking about losing all the LCSs and the brick and mortar comic book stores, for me, I think the direct market, if you look back at the history of comics when it came into being in the late 70s and early 80s, I think that was sort of led comics into a dead end in terms of the readership, because everyone used to be able to get the comics at your grocery stores, and everywhere you went were comic racks, and now you have to go to the comic store to get them. And I think we're seeing this dwindling. It's going to end. But when I look at comics as a medium and new generations, if you look at the sales of things like Raina Telgemeier's books or the Dogman books, they're selling millions of copies, and there's a whole generation of young comic readers out there, like millions of them, and none of them are going to comic stores to get their comics. They're going to bookstores, they're getting them other places. So I think like the new generation of comics readers are not going to the comic stores. They're buying things online. They are getting them on Amazon. They're getting them in sort of the spaces where we as indie creators are more active. And I think we can tap into them. As much as I've, loved over, my life for the last 40 years of buying comics, going to the LCS to get, comics and stuff, I kind of think in a way as a creator, not as a fan, but as a creator, I can just let them die off while I'm trying to get the people, all the, millions of teenagers that are reading manga right now, like those are the people that are not going to comic stores, but they are going online, to buy stuff.
That's true. Fair enough. Okay, hold on. And Sam says, plus the investment in getting press runs large enough to make price points attractive to retailers and their customers. That helps a great deal. Yes, it does.
Yep. That's a big problem because when we printed 1,000 copies, and even at that point, it's the price per book, what you're selling at the comic shop, by the time we pay everybody to get the comic done, you're really not making money. The comic shop is just, like you said, top of the funnel. You're trying to get your name out there.
Can I ask how much you paid for? Can I ask how much you paid for those 1,000 units?
I don't remember off the top of my head, Travis.
Was it print?
Was it
print on demand or was it offset?
It was comic impressions. I don't know.
Okay. For us, it was our cost was a bit elevated. if you've seen our work, it's really not our work. We do the words. Ailer, right in the center of that screen, he's the one that creates all that beautiful artwork. Our beautiful artwork comes with a little bit of an extra price tag. A lot of you guys are doing this, you know, solo and or, you know, duo, however you want to handle it. But I mean, we're paying out of pocket for the work. So for us, paying out of pocket for the artwork and all of that, it led it to be like our issue cost was barely less than what we sell it for at the actual retailer. By the time the artwork was done, I mean, our issue cost was up to something like $3.85 an issue.
And that's just printing, or that includes your production?
That includes the production, that includes the artwork, that include. I mean, it includes a lot of stuff. But when you're selling it for $5 an issue at the store, you know, I mean, we look at this as a totally different way. I mean, with having the group that we have, it's sort of a bigger model. I mean, the money starts to come in at a different part in the game after there are graphic novels and after we're moving along. But right now, with us, the basic comic book store is not making enough money. We have to generate most of our money on Kickstarter for our model to work.
And to answer your question, I want to say printing and having it shipped to us was like $2,500 or something like that.
It was less than that. It was barely less than that. But when you throw in all the
that
artwork
puts you at
costs,
$250 an issue.
Right. No, I get it.
For the
I get it. I use them too, and you know, one of the things, I have fun when I talk numbers. So I apologize. I'm not trying to bogart anybody.
No, I don't mind.
Right. But I use them also when I do my offset printing. Right. And I paid $2,323 and change, so about $2,376 to ship to New York for 2,000 units. Four different covers, 24-page full color book, right? So when they broke that all down, it comes out to about $1.19 per unit, right? But that's where the crowdfunding comes in, because with the crowdfunding, that's where you're looking to recoup your production expense, in my opinion, right? Because we're not selling advertising in our books, so how are we coming up with the money to cover production costs? So that's where it comes in for me. Now that I have those 2,000 units, okay, production costs are covered, printing costs are covered, right? And the sell-through on those 2,000 units, whether it's a week, a day a week, a month, or a year, well, that's when I start to generate the revenue to either A, put in my pocket, or B, pay the production team in advance for the next round of work.
You put money in your pocket?
Don't you
what
see
the hell is that?
Don't you see this mansion that I live in over here? You know what I mean? I don't know if my leg.
Chris, Scott, have you ever put money in your pocket? Do you even know what that means?
I hope someday.
You know, I have started taking some of the money from my Kickstarters and just putting it back in my pocket. Even though, like, I've decided to start sort of paying myself a little bit. It means less money to make the next comic, but yeah, I'm not making any money, just to be clear. I'm still losing money, but with the money, when I do the Kickstarters, I earmark a part of it to like take as a salary, just so I feel like I'm accomplishing something.
You gotta pay yourself at some point.
No, you don't.
Hold on, Jay. When you did your print run, you were talking about. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What were your? Did you do the 100-pound cover stock, or did you do like the floppy covers, like the?
No, I did 70-pound self.
Thank you.
70-pound self covers. Oh, you want 100-pound?
We did on Broken Trine #1. We did the 100-pound.
Yeah.
And it is way more expensive.
It turned out beautiful, but it was so heavy duty. It was like, I mean,
it's like a graphic novel.
This is made for a graphic novel. This is not made for.
So now here's where another element comes into play. You got to look into shipping as well, right? So, I am a 18-year veteran of the United States Post Office, right? And I know a lot of people love to do medium mail. Yeah. All right, let's listen. I wasn't puffing up my chest with that, brother. All right, I'm just trying to give a foundation for the statement. A lot of people do medium mail, right? Because it's like $1 cheaper than first class. Please don't do that. You're putting yourself at risk. You may not get the book back. If people move, there's no way that's going to get sent to the next person. All right. And you may never know whether they received it or not, even though there's a tracking number on it. So you may have to end up paying double for either it's sending them extra copies and then for, the shipping rate again. But going back to the 100-pound weight. So the sweet spot is under 15 ounces. If you can do a package that's under 15 ounces, it's still at least four and change for first class shipping. I don't know how many 100-pound books you can put into a shipping package and still keep it under 15 ounces, because once you go over those 15 ounces, it becomes priority shipping. So that 4 and change becomes 7 and change or 8 and change, depending on which kind of discount service you're using online. So you want to keep that stuff in mind, and for everybody who's out there looking too, with all the little tchotchkes that you put into your campaigns, right? So whether it's trading cards, pins, docks, fucking pillowcases, I see people putting all that
pillowcase.
Pillowcase. I've seen it. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the things you gotta think of. But that's one of the things that comes with experience in doing this.
Ailer, do you want to design a pillowcase for us?
Sure.
I think he means one
of those like waifu pillows. Like
the background.
Yeah.
I forgot what they're called. Yeah.
And we get the My Pillow guy involved with this.
Oh boy, don't do that. Don't do that.
He's from Minnesota too.
Pulled out because that was about to announce a pillow giveaway, Jay.
All right. Here I'm gonna pull up the first campaign here.
All right.
Very nice. Mr. Chris, do you want me to play this video?
Sure. So the beginning of the video has a theme created by George O'Connor, but it's probably louder than the actual portion where I talk about the project. So yeah, let's play it, but just prepare that you might have to turn the volume down and then back up when it hits the part where I talk.
Gotcha. Okay. I probably will do none of that, but okay.
just fair warning for everybody. I'm not a professional video maker. Yeah.
All right, any day now.
So really good video, Chris.
Oh, sorry.
It's not showing screen on it, but put the heads up.
Way to break the stream, Chris.
I'm the worst.
Yeah, everybody froze. It was freaking me out for a second. I was like, what'd I do?
JD, do you want us to share screen for our projects, or what's most helpful?
Did I notice something wrong? I didn't see the campaign come up on screen.
Is this? All right. What's going on?
Uh-oh.
All right. In the meantime, everybody do their best shadow puppets.
Yes, do the shadow puppets.
Since my project is primate themed, I can teach you how to do a gorilla. You just go like that.
Please tell me we're not still live.
We are.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's the beauty of it all. So while Calderon has been his own producer for the show, Chris, why a mantle?
So this entire project started as prose, and so I saw it as a challenge for how to bring something that's incredibly visual, like cartoons and animation, into something that is more like theater of the mind. So into novel form. And so this project, and I just realized it hasn't popped up yet, so I'll tell you what the project is. It's called Mandrill PI. It's a noir urban fantasy set in a cartoon world where the protagonist, who is an anthropomorphic mandrill, solves occult and supernatural mysteries. So it's kind of like Hellboy meets Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay.
And the reason I picked a mandrill is because I wanted a primate, because there's a long history in comics of primate private detectives who are solving mysteries, and I just love that shtick.
Okay.
And so within that overall subset or subgenre, if you will, the cool thing about mandrills is they have this like ridiculous pop of color, like the purple cheeks and the red nose, and then also the bluish purple ass and all of that stuff. Where you could have this character who's kind of like a little embarrassed about his appearance because he's kind of rare in his world, but also, in addition to that, the world is set up so that like the center of the city he lives in is called the Grays. It's where this world started before color entered the world, and this guy's kind of down on his luck and lives in the Grays because he doesn't have anywhere else to live, doesn't have the money, all of that stuff. And so again,
I'm sorry, this guy meaning the mandrill.
Sorry, this mandrill. His name's Manny Mandrill, and so he lives in this area, this black and white area of town, and so he really stands apart from everything else, not only because of his facial appearances and just overall noir aesthetic, but he stands in contrast to sort of the gray, black and white area of town that he lives. And then he goes on these adventures to solve occult and supernatural mysteries. He's pretty down on his luck by the time we meet him. He used to be on the police force in the homicide unit, and his wife died of something relatively mundane, and he's in the throes of alcoholism when we meet him. And then the overall story arc over the course of the 3 novels and all of the comics is that he basically moves from this point of lowness into kind of redeeming himself by the very end. Not to spoil anything, but this book that you're showing here is sort of the Empire Strikes Back almost of this.
I think Calderon is working behind the scenes showing us all.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the middle book of the novel trilogy where it gets pretty dark before the light comes. And so in this novel, Mandrill PI is hired to hunt down the kidnappers of a celebrity's children. So this celebrity is basically the Steve Irwin equivalent of this world, and his toddlers have been kidnapped, and Mandrill PI goes on the hunt for them, and then finds out that a couple of mysterious figures from his past are hunting him back. Nice. And it gets pretty dark by the end, and you meet different parts of the city that you haven't in other novels thus far. You go to places like Dinotopia, where the Flintstones influenced cartoons are. Okay. And you go to a place called the Fungi Fiefdom, where the Mario Brothers influenced cartoons are, and the graveyard, where you have the Casper style characters that are ghosts who were invented in this town rather than just dead people. And so you see a lot more places within the city while he solves this big mystery. But in the end, it's going to be bittersweet because, like I said, it's the Empire Strikes Back of this trilogy where it gets pretty bad for him by the end.
Now, is everyone in this series anthropomorphic, or are they dealing with humans as well?
Yeah, so there's an area of the city called Manhattan where the human tombs live. So basically, every species has their own neighborhood within the city. I commissioned a cartographer. His professional name is Kane arcane weird cartography. And so within each novel, you get the map of the city, so you can see where all of the different species of toons live. And so Manhattan is a big neighborhood in there where all of the human toons live. And so it's a lot of anthropomorphism plus other styles of cartoons that you would see within the history of cartoons. And basically, like, each street is named after a different major figure from animation history. So there's little Easter eggs like you can look for as you read and as you sort of dive into that map that's in the book. And so there's a lot of, I see it as my love letter to 80s and 90s cartoons and hard-boiled detective fiction.
Okay.
And overall, it's been really fun to write. I take it and serialize it across comics and novels. And so what I tend to do is release 2 comic book issues and then a novel.
Oh, so it's not an adaptation of the novel.
So the first story arc in the comics is an adaptation of a novella, which I kind of treat as the prequel novella to the novel series. And so that novella, the issue, the volume 0, you can actually get on Amazon for free, and I also offer it up for free.
Oh, nice.
In the campaign here, so you can access that and read the prose there to see if you like it. And future story arcs in the comics are going to be completely new and not adaptations. And so Carlos and I, for the comic, are working on basically the beginning building blocks of that next story arc, because the first comic arc is going to finish after issue 6. So I'm going 2 comics, a novel, 2 comics, a novel, 2 comics, a novel. So issue 5 and 6 are the last 2 in the comic.
Nice. The
first comic story arc, and they'll come after this novel.
So why do both? Is there a reason you can't choose one or the other, or do you feel you can get out more content, or what's the case?
A little bit of both. So I grew up loving comics, and I always wanted to get into comics writing, but most of my writing career has been prose writing. And so it really came down to, I was writing the series as a prose series, and I was on the subreddit Comic Book Collabs and ran into Carlos and his work, and I just saw it, and I was like, this guy would absolutely be perfect to draw Mandrill PI. And I reached out to him to see, like what his page rate was, all of that fun stuff. And we ended up going back and forth a little bit and realizing that we would work really well together. And so I was like, I can't wait until after the pros are done to start adapting this into comic form, because this guy is amazing and he might be snapped up by somebody and not be available anymore. Yeah. So I just had to move and start creating the comics. And the very first thing that we did was a 12-page prequel comic, which you can also download in any of my campaigns. I offer it up for free. And it's this mini comic about the anthropomorphic moon of this world, who thinks that her husband, the anthropomorphic sun, is cheating on her. And she hires Mandrill PI to do some investigative work. And he catches the sun in the act and then has to run from the sun as the sun tries to murder him to keep him from getting the evidence to the moon. Okay. So, it's a lot of fun stuff like that, like tropes you would see in cartoon worlds, but a very much an adult audience and very much a noir urban fantasy audience.
Okay. I mean, you know what you're going for.
Yeah. So Jose's fighting his laptop right now, and I figure I could either come on here and fist fight JD Rosario directly, or just put up campaigns for everybody.
I got 50 on Daphne. I got 50 on Daphne right now.
Joke's on you. I got 100 on Daphne.
So until he gets his laptop to start behaving. I have a question. I have a question about Mandrill PI. So you're doing a combination. So you're doing comics and novels, correct? Right. Correct. So as somebody who's kind of like mixing those two formats in future campaigns, how are you finding marketing something like a comic book, right? And at the same time continuing the story as prose? I mean, and like, you like afraid you're splitting your market, or are you finding your comic book people are just as receptive to prose? How is that working out for you?
Yes. So not all of the comic book people come over. Like some of my biggest comic book backers don't actually transfer over to the novels, but like I'd say 60 to 70% at least jump over and grab the digital version of the novel, which ultimately like that's what I'm hoping for, is at least some sort of transfer audience between the two. And some of the people who found the series through the novels, a lot of them have jumped over to the comics as well. And ultimately, I see them as kind of going hand in hand. You don't have to read the comics to read the novels, and vice versa. And so what I do to try and market between the groups is I take, I commission Carlos, to my comic artist, to create some super limited edition prints that I'll make for each of my novel launches. And so that way, the fans of the comics can jump over to the novels and try and grab something like super cool that they wouldn't get really anywhere else, and is using the art by Carlos. And then I get Carlos also to do character designs for the new characters that show up in the novels. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use that art for stretch goals for die cut stickers and stuff like that I can just sort of hand out to backers. And ultimately, a lot of it is taking inspiration from what we do on the comics side of things and bringing it over to the prose side of Kickstarter, because prose Kickstarters are at a much earlier phase in life, I'd argue, than comics Kickstarters. You have a big influence of prose writers now who are just starting to get into Kickstarter, and I think we have a much more mature way of speaking to the audience that most prose authors are kind of learning as they learn the system. And so what I've found actually is taking things like variant covers and using those as a selling point for prose has worked, especially with audiences that come over from comics.
Nice.
And then in addition to that, like the things like prints and metal covers and prints and stickers and bookmarks, all of those things that we know move the needle a bit with our audiences in comics, they do for prose as well. And it's been pretty cool to see the audience carryover between the two. But it's definitely a strategy that I implemented from the beginning, to, instead of waiting till the comics were done to jump over to the prose, to sort of bounce it back and forth between the two. Because what it does is it keeps both audiences excited and thinking about the property between releases.
Oh, there you go. So okay, so you've already way past your goal now with 13 days to go. So it's like, so I'd like to thank the 128 people who have supported Mandrill PI so far with 13 days to go. So why don't we move on to another campaign, one that I'm a little biased for because of the content. All right, hold on, let me get this going.
Well, while she's looking that up, right. I want to say how much better the new host is than the last one. And, I certainly bend the knee to our new internet overlords. And,
this is actually I first heard about a quest when I guess Scott, you were on Tyler James's show the other night, weren't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we just did a pop-up mastermind with Tyler and some of the other comics launch people that have campaigns live. So I don't know. We did the live stream. That's also going to be, if anyone listens to the podcast, he's going to be re-airing that in segments on the podcast. So I don't know when my episode's going to air. But we just did that this last week.
Right. Oh, and you don't have so a bold choice to not have a video.
Yeah, I don't have a video. I usually do one, and it's usually just like 1 minute of me talking about the project. Yeah. And I may still do one. Sometimes I actually add it partway through the campaign to mix things up. But I've found in my previous, and this is my 10th campaign, and I've found in my previous ones that almost nobody watches any of my videos. You know, I'll have like, you know, I had a campaign with 187 backers, which is my biggest one so far. And I think I only got like 60 watches of the video for the whole campaign. So I know that it's taught to really put that out there. But for me, I decided like, I want to come up with a really cool video. At some point, I'm going to have some animation, like a Saturday morning cartoon, like intro and stuff. But I felt like if I don't have a really good video, maybe just skip it. So I know that's not conventional wisdom, but that's what I decided to do.
Right. So why don't you give us a quick rundown on this book of yours?
Sure. Well, this is the first issue of an ongoing epic fantasy series that is influenced in large part by Dungeons and Dragons, and it's basically a ragtag group of adventurers are thrown together by fate, and they're charged with an impossible quest with the fate of their world at stake. So, you know, it's all the good stuff. We've just hit the 80 backers, so this graphic hasn't been updated yet. I'm going to be doing that later tonight. But basically, you know, I love fantasy. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1980 when I was 7 years old, and I've always loved fantasy comics. Some of my first comics that I ever got were fantasy comics, Warlord and Savage Sword of Conan and Red Sonja, all comics that I read as a kid. So I really wanted to do a fantasy comic. And so basically, in this first issue, the page we're showing here at the beginning, we have our adventurer party gets attacked by gnolls, which are kind of like, dogmen. They're sort of classic low-level D&D monsters. And the paladin shows up at the last minute to help save the day. And as the series goes along, we're going to be seeing a lot of dungeon crawls. There's a lot of ruined, cities and things like that. And we're going to see the characters sort of level up. By the time they get to the end of the quest, people are going to have like different equipment and they're going to be higher level. I play a lot of MMOs, and so I kind of wanted to have that feel as well. And I'm really looking forward to doing more. You can see some of the variant covers here. I love doing the variant covers. And one thing that I did, we just had scrolled by one of the variant covers that looks like an old Dungeons and Dragons module cover. And so for that's the first time I've tried something a little bit different. It's not just the variant cover, but it's a whole different edition where it's got the full comic, but it also has several pages of gaming supplement materials. So you can actually play the story from the issue in your own home game. So it has the rules for how paladins work in this world. It's got the monster that they fight in issue 1. It's got the location that they go to in issue 1. There's like a whole mini module, so you can just play out the whole story yourself in your own home game if you want to.
Oh, so not only can you read the comic, but you could play it as well.
Yeah, we just a friend of mine who's been my dungeon master since we were in college for the last 25 years. He helped me, translate the story do all the gaming supplements. And we actually just did a playthrough yesterday that we recorded. It hasn't gone up yet, but it's going to go up on his gaming channel, and I'll be sharing it with all my backers and stuff. So we played it through. So like me and my wife and a friend of mine, we played the characters from the story going through the adventure. So I think it'll be a lot of fun, particularly for people they're interested in Dungeons and Dragons. And the basic idea for this world is one that I've been working on for a long time. Here's the edition I was just talking about. This one here, which is, it's an homage to old Dungeons and Dragons modules. But, when I play Dungeons and Dragons, I sometimes get taken out of it because I'm like, why are there these haunted ruins and stuff everywhere in this fully developed, society here? Like, if I'm in Waterdeep or something in Forgotten Realms, I don't understand why no one's ever taken care of this like haunted castle that's right around the corner. So,
well, if they took care of it, it wouldn't be a haunted castle.
well, exactly. But so anyway, in my world, basically, the is like at the end of Lord of the Rings, what happens next? Because I always think, oh, we get the happy ending at the end of Lord of the Rings. When you think about it, you've got an entire giant continent that's been completely devastated for thousands of years, and it's still overrun by armies of orcs, and it's all ruins, and no one has any home to go back to. So that's this world here. It's 200 years after the big heroes saved the world, and now they're sort of going out into the ruins of the previous world and trying to reclaim some of the lost magic and history of that. And they're running into all these different things in the ruins. So it's a story that I started working on back in the 90s, and I've gone through a lot of different iterations, but I'm finally really excited to finally, get it out to everybody.
Right. Well, again, it's like for this campaign, I'd like to thank the 89 backers who've raised. I mean, you're close to your goal. You're like 2,900. So yeah, with 12 days to go, I mean, I don't think you'll have a problem reaching that.
I'm optimistic we're going to make it.
I need glasses. I thought that's at 2,300. I'm like, oh, you're right.
Oh, no, it's 29. No, it's 29. Yeah. Look, it's like I only because I saw it on another screen, not because I could read it on this one. So Jay, why don't you? So, do you have another question while I'm gathering up the other campaigns? Getting the links to the other campaigns together. Yeah. So, do you have a question for the panel?
Oh, question for the panel. Oh,
yeah, do you have a question for the panel? You are technically the co-host.
Jay, make sure you write this one down.
Yeah,
you give me way too much credit. We know that's never going to happen, dude. That's never going to happen. So you know what? I'm going to reach into the comment section over here. And I'm going to ask what Granda asked, right? And he said, I guess you may have talked about this on another stream, but what are your thoughts on he's using one specific new crowdfunding platform called Fund My Comic, but let's talk about all the other crowdfunding platforms in general. Why aren't you using one of the other crowdfunding platforms? We're going to start off with? We're going to start off with Travis. What's up, buddy?
I'm going to pass this one to Dave just because my job. Well, wait, let me finish. My job in our comic is to co-write and edit. Dave is sort of our mastermind when it comes to any sort of marketing.
I'm the creative director.
Yeah, I get to do the fun job, guys. I get to hang out behind the scenes and say, hey, this character should do this and this character should do that. Dave is the one that has to deal with okay, we're gonna fund it on this and we're gonna market this way. And most of the time I just say,
right.
Yes.
So you're the foreman.
Just do what you're gonna do and shut up.
Well, so I mean, I personally I don't have a social media account anywhere. I'm not a Facebook person or any of that. So you're asking these questions. I'm like, I'm going to pass this one to Dave, but
all right. So Dave, why not Fund My Comic, Zoop, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo, why Kickstarter?
Because 2.5 years ago when we decided to write comics, and I did already know about Kickstarter, but when I Googled, how to become an indie comic writer, Kickstarter was the first one that came up.
There you go.
And then I found Tyler James and Comics Launch and joined Comics Launch, and they teach you how to use Kickstarter. And from what I can tell, it seems to be the top one. I'm not opposed to trying another one, but it's just go with what you know kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So then, since you're answering, why don't we look at your campaign?
Oh, actually, I unlike on Jose's computer, I think I can actually play videos properly.
Oh,
so, are you playing the video?
Yeah, go ahead. We're not talking in this one, so it's a much better video than I usually.
Yes.
Okay. Let me just hope that I pressed all my buttons correctly. Did everyone hear that? Because I heard the audio on my end.
Yeah, I heard it.
Okay.
I felt like I was at GameStop watching a promo. You know,
Yeah,
I was like, hey,
my good friend Steve Kruger wrote and played that song on his guitar and recorded it for us. And,
oh wow!
Yeah.
Can I become Steve Kruger's good friend too?
He would gladly do some work for you.
Now that we're on the subject of this campaign, feel free to ask me all kinds of questions. I'm not going to pass them off today. But
yeah,
anyway,
you know what, Travis, you can describe it for once. I always describe it. You go right ahead.
All right. So basically, the Broken Trident 1, which was successfully funded. Thank you all very, very much.
All right.
It was sort of the beginning of a very long story that we have kind of mapped out. It's set in a high fantasy setting. You have, your traditional elves. You have some magic use. But also it's sort of its own little area. I mean, the way that we're creating this world doesn't fit into any specific D&D setting, although it was originally created through that. And I think to better explain the origin, Dave will jump in. But what I'm going to talk about before he jumps in again is just this number 2. I mean, our first one, we started building some characters and we started creating a real background. But as you're seeing, as he scrolls through this is an action-packed issue.
Oh yeah,
there's lots of explosive stuff going on. We're super excited about actually getting to show our audience what our people are capable of. And man, we're gonna talk over each other while we look through this, because like we have to give a huge shout out to Ailer. Like everything that you're seeing here, this is all Ailer Azusano. Like this is his beautiful artwork. Our writing is fantastic. I'm not to push myself too far, but I feel really good about it. And we're getting into this second one where everything starts to blow up a little bit, and it's just starting to get exciting. And we're 93% funded.
Yep.
I mean, we're almost there.
Yeah, we're almost there. We're kicking butt on this, and I mean, our team is fantastic. Everything that we're working on here, it's all just building blocks to a bigger story. But the second one, we're songwriter. Oh, there you go.
Who is that 16-year-old artist that works on the book? He doesn't look like the person that's sitting on our panel today.
Yeah, go up a little bit more. There you go. Yeah.
Who's that? Who's that? Oh, yeah, man, look at that.
Yeah, that was me before pandemic.
Ailer, have you been growing your hair since the pandemic?
Yeah. Because when all the barbershops closed, and then like after the pandemic, it was like I was having this really long hair and beard, and it was like I'm just gonna keep it.
When I met Ailer, he looked like that picture.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now he's going for the pirate look in the books that he's illustrating. Way to go.
Right? Yeah. That one was Oliver. He's my assistant artist. He does the clean lines.
Okay.
Because I do the sketches. He does the clean lines, and he does the flat colors.
Okay.
And I would just add like shadows and like effects from that.
Gotcha.
And so because our art is like heavy detail. So while he's working on it, I would do the backgrounds. So
yeah, they're an awesome team. We couldn't be happier.
And a really fun part about Ailer, I think this is your first interview on YouTube with everybody. Maybe I'm wrong.
He's done one or two with me for How to Build an Army, though. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ailer has another comic that's in Lakeshore Comics, How to Build an Army, but.
Gotcha.
It was just like, and I'm going to stop talking after this because I feel like I'm hogging the mic, but it's been such a rewarding experience because as we've worked together, like Dave and I, we grew up writing comics together regardless of how terrible they were when I was 6 years old and he was 10. Like we played around writing comics since we were little kids. And coming into the whole thing with Ailer, and Dave can tell you more about that. They met through Dungeons and Dragons, basically character sketches, but Ailer really got what we were trying to do. And honestly, Ailer has helped build this world so much. He's not just an artist. I mean,
he's as much of the company as we are at this point.
Yeah. I mean, whenever we talked about how we were going to build this and how these characters were going to interact and how the world was going to work together, I mean, How to Build an Army worked so well with what we already had. And it was funny because Ailer had created some characters or some villains that were identical to what we had created when we were younger.
Well, they were identical in idea. In drawing, they were good, and ours
way better. Yeah,
my horrible childhood drawings.
Yeah, of course. The whole experience in like Ailer, you're from the Philippines, but it just like being able to connect with somebody from so far away with such a talent, and like he just gets it right off the bat. I mean, everything about this has been so seamless, and that's largely thanks to Ailer Azusano.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Thanks.
So we talked, Travis kind of mentioned the origins of this, and I that's why before we went live, I was saying to Scott that I feel like Scott and us should do some cross promotion, because we were very D&D inspired. Like, it's not, we don't have anything set up where we can play it as a D&D camp. Well, actually, technically I do, because I wrote Janor was my first D&D character that I ever created. And then I wrote a campaign as a DM based in the same world. Oh, there's our Lego minifigure. I love those things. Yep.
Tchotchkes.
We went way less on the tchotchkes on this campaign. We have like a T-shirt and the Lego minifigure, and I think that's it.
Okay.
I was trying to find my Janor Lego minifigure to hold up to the camera, but yeah. So the Janor was my first D&D character, and that's kind of what inspired this. And Travis and I started talking about making a comic, and the story's based on that. There's Janor's Lego minifigure, and but yeah, it's the story is Janor, the purple guy. He tries to return to his childhood home of Sansarine and finds it destroyed, and that's in the first issue. And they set off to figure out who or what destroyed it, and he was already part of this pirate crew, and so he goes back up to the ship with Zadrin, the blue guy, and they meet Sandara at the end of issue 1, and that's kind of the premise of the series. And
there's a lot of mystery involved. Like, so far, it's sort of like, wait, what is even happening? I mean, all we've had published was just a first issue, but it's sort of setting the stage for a much bigger story that's going on. I mean, the city getting destroyed was the very beginning of something much bigger. And it's really exciting to see it start to unfold.
And I just want to point out too, at the bottom of the main cover, it says Keepers of Venox, and that's our whole kind of world name. And our original idea was it was going to be Broken Trident 1 through 5, and Keepers of Venox. Each issue would go up in number. So Broken Trident number 5 would be Keepers of Venox number 5. But we've now kind of decided to rebrand just a little bit. So issue 3, the branding will go Keepers of Venox number 3, and then subtitle Broken Trident, because we had 5 different miniseries planned, and so after Broken Trident, it would be a completely different title, but with Keepers of Venox at the bottom. And like I said, we want to switch that a little bit so the branding makes sense for our current fans.
Gotcha.
So rather than keeping the Broken Trident name at the top, it'll be Keepers of Venox. Like, once we start that next miniseries, it'll be Keepers of Venox number 6, and then rather than having another chapter number or whatever, we'll have a different subtitle rather than Broken Trident.
So what happened to the other half of his trident?
If you scroll,
he's carrying it.
Oh, he is? I thought that was a sword he was carrying.
No, so he finds...
That's part of his powers.
So he finds a sword at the bottom of the ocean when he finds his city destroyed. And mild spoiler for issue 1, he thinks the sword... Well, the sword is from a group called the Band of Seven, this like rival pirate crew. and he thinks that the Band of Seven is who destroyed his city, and he brings the sword back up to the ship, and then in his rage of his city being destroyed, he realizes he has this power to break this weapon with his mind, and then later in the issue realizes that he also has the power to meld things into the weapon. So the sword that he finds, the handle pops off the sword, and the blade of the sword melds into the bottom half of the broken trident and becomes his offhand weapon.
Okay.
And then he's going to have more powers related with like artificer type stuff where he can basically merge and unmerge the weapon.
There's a lot coming up when it comes to that weapon and other weapons as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of a, I don't want to spoil too much, but basically, let's just say when he took the sword off the bottom of the ocean and molded it into something else, that's probably not his end game.
Right. But now that we're back to the variant covers, let's stop on the one that we're on right now. That's Nathan Luth. He's a part of Comics Launch. He did this cover. Love this cover so much. We did a crossover with him on his Kickstarter. So if you backed both, you got a crossover print featuring his main character from the Canon Evangel and Janor. And then if you scroll up just a little bit here, there's two other variant covers. This one was from Jamie Ryan from the UK. That's an homage to Green Arrow, Green Lantern. Instead of Green Lantern shooting the lantern, it's Zadran looking at the Trident broken. And this one right here is my absolute favorite. Like I've been a big Deadpool, Cable, New Mutants, X-Men fan my whole life, and so that's the first appearance of Cable homage cover. And this was another artist we had met online, and Magno Silva from Brazil, I believe, and just killed that cover. I'm really excited about seeing that one in print. Not to take away from these other two that are Eiler's variants.
Yeah, let's maybe focus on the best for last here. Look at this.
This one, this is my absolute favorite. I'm going to get a poster of this printed and put it above my bed.
I already have Eiler's art all over my wall, and now I have to get more.
More art or more wall?
Well, maybe both. We'll see how the comic goes, huh?
Gotcha. All right, cool. So yeah, it looks like you guys are well on your way. You'll probably be
7% to go.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah.
So Daphne, who's next?
I don't know. Who is next? Hold on. Who am I missing here?
We got Scott. We got the Broken Trident. Right. We got Mandrill. I was gonna. I'm sorry, Chris. I almost said Magnum PI. I apologize. it just felt natural,
Let's see. So we did. Okay. So we did. We did Quest. We did Mandrill. And then I guess the three of you is Broken Trident.
Right. Right? Yes. We're a crowd.
Right. So, does Damion have a campaign?
No.
Or just his website?
Just my beautiful face.
Damion is
a beautiful cat. Did nobody else notice the cat?
Oh yeah,
the cat was a beautiful cat.
Her name is Baby because nobody puts her in a corner.
I hear that line and I'm like, yeah, if I'm your dad, I'm putting her in the corner because there's no way
cat will jack you up.
No, I'm talking about the movie, not the cat. I'm talking about the movie.
Oh no.
They're right. My 16-year-old underage daughter is going to go in the fucking corner if some 20-something-year-old guy is trying to take her out of the cabin tonight. Fuck out of here, man. Fuck out of here.
Yeah, the dad was definitely right in the movie.
I'll take the cat.
You were absolutely
I'll stick with it.
Well, hold on. Since we're in the middle of this, Damion is yet to ask a question. So why don't we let Damion?
Yes.
I kind of got mentally sidetracked after my disappearing act. So I'm going to go with my go-to question. What was your gateway drug? What got you in this? Like, what was the thing that, you finally saw that said, I don't just want to be a consumer, I want to be a participant?
Gotcha. All right, let's start with, we're all over the place now. Travis,
Well, I guess, I mean, it's a weird question. You're talking about current. I mean, Dave called me a couple of years ago, and like I said earlier in the interview, he and I wrote comics together when we were little kids. I mean, we grew up together, and it was always just a for fun thing. This sounds like a stupid thing, but he called me and he said, "Hey, do you want to write another comic?" And my actual response to him was, "Hey, if you want me to come over and have a beer with you, I will just come over. Like, you don't have to pretend like we're going to do stuff like we used to do when we were 6 and 10 or whatever the hell." And he was like, "No, I'm serious. I've looked at this Kickstarter thing and I think we've got it. You know, we've got," and then when I got there, we had basically been writing the same story, like, going back to Chris. I mean, you said that you were doing some prose. A lot of your work is prose combined with comic work. I wasn't a comic writer. I was writing prose. I was trying to write like a short story or something. And I had already come up with basically this underwater race that was interacting with sort of a political thing on the surface and how it was going to work and whatever. And Dave had created this D&D character that somehow was exactly like what I had already created. So we came back together, and I guess for me, bottom line, to make a long story long, I just it was basically just getting called back to doing what I had done as a kid, only doing it right. And of course, you throw Ailer into the mix, and you guys have seen the art, like everything just boom. I mean, I can't believe that this is even I can't believe that we're on number 2. But yeah, I mean, I guess it was, for me, it was just a calling back to what I did when I was a kid, and it just blew up better than I ever thought it would.
Very cool.
All right, fair enough. Chris, what got you into all of this?
Sure. So there are a couple of things that did. One, like I learned to read on comics. I used to not realize that sigh was not a word that you said when you were frustrated. I would walk around, and when I was frustrated with something, I would say that out loud because of comics.
That's all right. Don't you find yourself having to resist from saying LOL?
You're not alone.
LOL.
You're not alone.
So I ultimately, like, I always wanted to write them, but there was a period in my life where I, like every teenager does, sometimes you get too cool for them, and then around like late high school, early college, I got super back into them. And there was at the comic shop I would go to in college in St. Louis, there was a day where, like, before like Ryan Otley and Robert Kirkman and all of those guys kind of blew up, they came in to do a signing, and I got to meet those guys, and I realized, oh, these are just people that write these things that I love. And I sort of got back into the idea of, okay, that's something that I would like to do, kind of permanently for a living and for my life. And so as I grew into an adult and started, at the time I was a high school English teacher, and if you know anything about teachers, they don't make much money. So being able to do a lot of hiring of artists and actually paying them, not something I could really handle at the time. So I got into prose. And so prose allowed me to handle the entire story myself, because I'm not an artist, and I know that my skills there are not great. And so I developed that skill in prose writing over time. And eventually after I went to grad school and then moved to a different career and was able to start hiring artists for a rate that, like, made sense, I was able to get back into the comic side of things. But, like, in the meantime, I was doing things like writing comedic science fiction, and then writing the Mandrill PI prose novels, and then finding an artist to then start with, dipping my toes back into the comics world with that. And then I've got a couple of other series that are in the works right now that I'm gonna be announcing and launching hopefully later in the year, maybe into 2024.
Nice.
Nice.
Ailer, what got you into this weird and strange game that we're in?
To the comic world. Yeah, I've always even as a kid, I've always wanted to draw. I really love to draw. I think the first comic book that I did was in grade school. I have this one notebook. I think it was my math notebook. I really don't like math, so I turned it into a comic book, and it got me in trouble because when the teacher looked at our notebooks, it was just like comic book that I wrote in my notebook. So like I drew and wrote, so it got me in trouble. So yeah, but I've always loved to draw. I even like draw like those, like some of my notebooks has this animation like on top of it, like
a flip book.
You would, like a flip book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've always loved to draw, and so the first comic book but the first like actual comic book I did was like the Broken Trident. I mean like what do you call this? How to Build an Army, and so that's the book that I showed Dave. I've always been into fantasy art, and funny enough, like before I got into this project, it's like I don't know, maybe fate or what have you, because I was drawing a lot of underwater creatures before I met like Dave. Like I was drawing a lot of mermaids, and I even have this like art piece of like Atlantis where there's this like fishman and a mermaid meeting up, and so when I think I showed it to Dave, that guy like riding, but it was more futuristic kind of Atlantis. But so when he approached me about this underwater and pirate thing, it's two things that I really love because I love One Piece. Like it's a ongoing like a lot of years now, and it's a pirate adventure. And at that time, I was like into like drawing a lot of underwater things, and it's like, and he has this idea of this like pirate and underwater and I was like, man, this is the two things I would really love. So yeah, just like I was so excited about this project, and I'm totally into D&D as well, because that's where we met, like in a D&D page group. So yeah, I was like super thrilled to be part of this.
I never had anyone. I wanted to play D&D. I never had anybody to play D&D with as a kid, man. You know,
you didn't have friends.
I know I had a lot of friends. They were not playing D&D in East New York, bro. They weren't doing that shit.
Listen, I was a Spanish father who was playing D&D. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll DM a game for you through Zoom or something.
I was gonna say I've played one short game of D&D on tabletop in my entire life. Like I played Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and all those computer games or whatever. But if you don't have a shitload of friends that will play D&D with you, I would highly recommend at least playing the computer games.
I'll tell you that, dude. I still got the TSR 2 Marvel ones. Just for the Doctor Doom map and the Fantastic Four map of the Baxter Building and Doctor Doom's castle. That was great. But I've never played. They're still all there.
Now, I'll be honest. Most of my playtime came when I was in high school, and we formed a club. So all the geeks got together, and and we played D&D in high school. So that's how I worked out for me. So yeah,
very cool.
But anyway, Scott. What was your gateway drug for comics?
Yeah, I always wanted to make comics. From as soon as I read my first comics, I wanted to start making them. There was a couple of sort of big moments for me in 1986 when I was 13. In the Overstreet Price Guide, there was a thing from Jim Shooter, who was the editor-in-chief of Marvel, and he was writing about how he got into comics and his experiences. And for those who don't know, Jim Shooter started writing Legion of Superheroes for DC when he was 13 years old. And so when I read that, I was 13. I was like, oh, so I can do that. So I started submitting stuff to Marvel and DC when I was 13, and they would send me some polite rejection letters. And I kept submitting stuff. I submitted stuff to Vertigo in the 90s, and I always wanted to make comics, but it felt like in terms of making my own stuff back in the time, it just felt like there were too many gatekeepers. Like it was so hard to, you know, have the money to do the big offset print runs back in the day and like get your books out. So just never felt feasible. And then a few years ago, you know, I realized that it kind of changed with the print on demand stuff, and with platforms like Kickstarter. Suddenly I felt like I could actually afford to make the comics and had a way to get them out to people that would bypass the LCSs. So the big hurdle was just sort of, you know, I still didn't really have much money for an artist, so I felt like I would have to draw it myself, and I didn't really think my art was good enough. And then I went to a Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo. I went to the MICE convention, and it's all people of all different sort of skill levels that are just passionate about making comics. And so I was really inspired by that. And, you know, there were some great comics that I got, and there were also some comics where I was like, oh, well, I can draw that well. So like but what they have that I don't have is they're willing to do it. They're willing to put it out there, you know? So I said, you know, I'm just going to do it. So, you know, the first few issues of my first series, Crime Busters, which I still do, I did everything on them. I drew them, I wrote them, I did the whole thing. And it's only, you know, recently that I've really wanted to ramp up the production and get stuff out, because I'm more of a writer than an artist. So I've got to the point where now I'm hiring the artists so I can put out a lot more comics. But it was really just it's something I always wanted to do, and it finally felt like, you know, it's time. You know, I just turned 50 this year, so it's time to stop wasting time and just do what you want to do.
Yep. Yes.
Oh yeah. I got you. Dave, what was your gateway drug into this comic book publishing thing?
Well, when Travis and I were kids, we kind of brought this up a little bit before, but we read X-Men religiously. I still am a huge X-Men fan, and we just decided to, well, hey, we're going to make our own superhero comic. And it was, you know, looking back on it, really, really bad, but it was it was us, you know, dipping our toe in the water, and then we, you know, of course, real life comes and you have to go to college and get a job and make money, and we kind of fell out of it, and then was it right? But was it before the pandemic, Travis? Was it right before the pandemic, or was it during?
I think you might have been in the bathroom when I was explaining some of this, but yes, it was basically like you called me and you're like, hey, let's make another comic, and I'm like, hey, if you want me to come have a beer with you, you don't
exactly
have to bullshit me here.
And so I had written all these D&D stories, and I had written Janor's backstory for a D&D campaign. Another character, Varen, who is part of the Keepers of Enoch's world, not released yet, but I played him a lot more than Janor, actually. He's an archer, kind of Green Arrow inspired. I'd written all these backstories, and my DMs would always be like, oh my God, your backstories are way longer than the rest of the player characters. Like, I'd done like 2-3 pages of a Google Doc. And then I started writing a D&D campaign myself that I still have yet to play. So again, Jay, if you want to play D&D, you can be part of that campaign.
Sounds like a plan, brother.
So I had written all this stuff, and then I was working from home and really didn't like my job at the time. I don't do that job anymore, but I was like, I need to do something else, and I wanted to get into comic writing, and I did some Google searches and stuff, and everything I found was like, you can't even apply to work for Marvel or DC or even really Image. Like, they have to find you. So I was like, start writing indie comics. So then I was like, okay, well, I have all these D&D backstories. I'll turn them into comic stories. And that's when I called Travis. And we initially came up with a completely different story that we may write still, but it was loosely based on the crappy things we wrote when we were kids. We might be saying no, but I'd like to come back to it, because we're
never throw anything away.
We have it all. I'm not throwing any of it away. You know, I feel like now that we're adults and we've written Broken Trident and these things, we could come back to it and make it good. But so then Travis and I were talking about, well, what do we want to write? And we didn't really have a lot of good ideas for that stuff based on when we were kids. And I said, well, hey, I have all these fantasy stories from D&D. And then that's when Travis told me, well, basically, I have the same stories, like not the same, but similar. Like I had this underwater sea elf creature, Janor, and he had Zadrin, and he had already came up with the name for the race, Atetians, and they were the same thing. We just didn't realize that we'd been writing these things unbeknownst to each other for years, and so it all just fell right into place. And I had already met Ailer at that point and had him draw Janor and Varen for these D&D campaigns. So when I started looking for artists, I reached out to a few through some groups, but when Ailer said he did comics, then we got in touch with him a lot more. And
it really was like, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say like 2 seconds and then I'm done. It really was such a cool moment when all three of us came together for the first time, and we had all essentially been doing kind of the same thing. I mean, when you asked Ailer, he had drawn some underwater, some Atlantis type things, and he had some of the same ideas. And when we all sat down to do this, it was like, wait, how are we all talking about the same thing right now? Like we just all met for the first time, and it was so seamless. Like it truly was like a magic moment. And I wish you guys could have seen that. It was just so cool that first time.
Nice.
That's cool. Yeah. All right, cool. Jay.
What's up?
What was your introduction, bro? Answer the question. What is wrong with you?
Come on, man. You know what got me into this? I wanted to be rich and famous.
Oh, so you're not bright, is what you're trying to tell me.
You're in the wrong market, buddy.
Damn. Come on, man. Come on. I got a brand new Maserati outside. No.
It's this big. It's on the shelf.
Yeah.
Hot Wheels.
I did that once. I said, I'm taking a Kickstarter when I brand a brand new car. And I showed a nice little Corvette Hot Wheels. But whatchamacallit? No, I mean, just like everybody else here, I grew up a fan. I loved comic books. And tried to get in, didn't know how to get in. Found about internships.
Wait, hold on. You beat around the bush. What was the actual comic book that you read and you said to you, this is why I want to do this? Because I read this book, and this is the one that inspired me to do it. What was that book? Come on, it's in there. It's in there. Come on. Rub those two molecules together. You'll get it.
Well, because I'm trying to think what got me into comic books or what got me into comic book writing.
When did you take that step from this is something I really like and I consume this and I enjoy this to I can do this? Like that moment of like that clarity moment where you're like, the clouds parted and light descended from above, and you knew.
I don't know. It just happened. It just happened. I mean, I remember being inspired by the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, right? And writing my own character entries for characters that didn't exist, right? Creating my own file cards. So I guess that was it, right? The back of the G.I. Joe box where you got to see, what they were, what they did, what kind of weapons they used. And the same thing with the Marvel Universe handbook. It broke it all down. So I was writing all of that on legal pads as a kid on a porch in Puerto Rico because it was either too rainy to go outside or too hot to go outside and spend energy. So that was it. And then I've always written something. I always had stories. I was in college and I found books of mythology that didn't deal with just Greek and Roman stuff. And I was like, oh my God, what is all of this? And I absorbed it and I held it and I utilized it when I finally started to develop what I was developing.
So it was like a series of moments. It wasn't like a moment. It was a progression.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
Cool. See, I know I can get it out of you. You had it in there somewhere.
It's in there. There's a lot in here.
Yes.
There's a lot in here. Yeah.
So Daphne, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daphne.
Well, it's like, look, we're almost at the end of the show, and I think that there's a campaign or two that we might have almost forgotten, to have spoken about. So yeah.
Yeah,
Funny.
Make it quick.
Yeah, well, why don't you make it quick? Considering.
Why do you always
I
do
just
that,
backed
JD?
this one earlier today, actually.
Right. So I would like to thank the 83 backers who have supported the Oswald Chronicles. I was there, and I remember issues 1 and 2 for raising $2,331.
Very nice.
7 days left to go. You're lucky I didn't let the mouse out today.
Hey, congrats on that project we love from Kickstarter.
Yeah, right?
That is
Yeah,
huge. Good job.
I'm going to point
That's
out Chris also had that on his project.
Oh yeah, he did.
Right. So,
Oh wow. Okay, cool.
and if you are a collector of JD Calderon's project, may I also present to you, also currently on Kickstarter as well. Where am I? Here I am. Yes. So if you are also a fan of JD Calderon's work and of my work as well, Tall Tales, or So I Thought, our very first full color Tall Tales comic ever is now on Kickstarter. Thank you so much for the 60 backers who have raised over $1,500 for this campaign. For those of you who are not familiar, this is a comic that both me and Jose worked on years ago, and now we are bringing it back to crowdfunding. And like I said, in its very first full color iteration. It was originally printed in black and white back in the day. We'll let you guys do the math. But now we are finally putting it out in full color. And if you want to know more about Tall Tales, I actually have a video on the campaign itself explaining the entire series. So yeah, so that is also on Kickstarter as well from the both of us. So yeah, so
very good.
Links to the campaign will be in the show notes because technically I wasn't supposed to be here. So
yep, we'll get it in there.
Yeah,
all right, before we wrap up, let's finish up with the question. Daphne, what was your first? What got you into this crazy business of comics?
Meeting you goof.
Go ahead.
This is true. No, it's actually true.
Well, yes. It originally was reading Mike Mignola's Rocket Raccoon and Elf Quest at the same time, but I didn't know what to do with it. Like, I knew that was something that I wanted to do, but I didn't know how. And then, like, I think it was like my sophomore year of art and design, that's when I met this guy.
I'm so sorry for you.
Right here. And it's been history, a long sordid history ever since.
Yeah.
Those are the best comics.
A lot of books.
And like I said, we have 2 campaigns currently on Kickstarter right now that everyone can peruse in their leisure. So
there you go. All right. Well, I'll answer real quick. It was Daredevil 168 by Frank Miller. That was the book that inspired me to try to write at a certain level that I have yet to be able to achieve to. So, it was one of those things where it's just like, it was so good. I was like, if I ever write a comic, I want to write it this well. Not necessarily like that one, but that well. I'm still struggling with that. Hey, it's Frank Miller. What do you expect?
Frank Miller set the bar pretty high.
Yeah. And then there was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When I was about 16, I saw it in the comic book buyer's guide. I saw their first ad for the second issue, and I looked at that ad, and I've been stuck ever since. I looked at it, and I said, I could do a comic book better than those guys. And here I am. It was one of those things, and I've just been self-publishing, since 92. So it's just crazy. Damion, answer your question.
I didn't clean my room one time when I was a kid. So my mom decided that she
just
was
one time
get mad. Oh, it was all the time. And so she got mad and she tore up a bunch of my comics, but she had neglected to actually tear them. She just ripped the covers off. And I was literally thinking about this the other day, and it popped into my head. This was the moment because I got paper and I recovered all my comics.
Oh.
And I drew. I was probably like 11, and I drew like all the covers and put them back on. I pulled the staples out, stapled them back in. It was great. It was a lot of work, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, "Huh, this must be what making comics is like," because I had no idea. And from there, I kind of felt like I could do this.
Very cool.
That's cool. I actually like that. That's nice. That's nice. All right, cool. Well, listen, we made it to hour number 2. We didn't pull up Jay's campaign, but Jay does have a
something coming up.
Yes, he has something coming up next
Saturday.
weekend. Saturday, right?
Oh, okay, I thought I missed something.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
All right. Okay.
No worries.
No
worries. Saturday's the big day.
The link is in the show notes, so it's down there. So you can click on the link and you can sign up for the pre-launch page. So that's what's there.
That's what's up. That's all. That's right.
The pre-launch page is there. So, thank you guys. You guys are all awesome. We're at the second hour, so we're about to step out. We'll just start from the. We'll start with Damion since you're already down there. Damion, please let us know where we can find you and your work, sir.
You can find me online. Some places. RUOmniversal.com. I'm on Facebook as me, or as Realmer X, or as some other stuff that I'm going to bring back. I won't talk about it yet. And I was going to throw out an offer. As you can see, I've got a bunch of pops here. If you contribute to every Kickstarter tonight, people watching, listen, and show me where you paid. Don't cancel it after. I'll let you pick a pop out of my collection. You can have it. Ship it to you totally free.
What?
I got
wow.
Not bad.
I got a lot of like $50, $60.
Yeah.
Talk about on the spot marketing. Thank you, Damion.
Right?
Seriously. Wow.
Very nice.
Very nice.
I try.
Okay. Scott, where can they find you and your work, sir?
You can find me at crimebustercomics.com, or you can find me on YouTube as the Classic Comic Collector.
Cool. I'm about to clean you out, Damion. I'm going to send you all 320 of the campaigns I back.
You'll just get one pop, though.
See? Look, it's a good thing I said that. No. Travis, where can they find you and your work, sir?
So you can find us at lakeshorecomics.com. So remember earlier where I passed something off because Dave has social media and I don't? Dave, where can they find us?
Travis has zero social media presence. If you search Travis Bowen online, you probably will just go to Kickstarter and nothing else.
And also, actually, on our website, before it was getting remodeled, it's in the middle of a remodel now, so I don't know if this is going to be a thing. But if you clicked on me on our website back in the day, you got Rickrolled. It sent you to like YouTube to Rick Astley.
Rick Astley's never going to give you up.
So
very nice.
And better Rickroll than Goatsay. So for those of you who've been on the internet long enough, don't look that up. Don't look that up.
Also,
Dave,
for the longest
where can
time,
you find us?
Travis's picture was just his cat on the website.
I approve.
It said Travis Bowen
I thought you would.
is a cat,
Awesome.
and there was no other information.
Travis is the cat.
Yeah, but no, so you can, so lakeshorecomics.com is currently under construction. So if you go there, it'll just redirect you to our big cartel store, where you can buy our comic. I'm working with a web designer on that, but that will be up to date eventually. Otherwise, facebook.com/Lakeshore Comics, at Lakeshore Comics on Instagram, at Lakeshore Comic without the S on Twitter. And then you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, both at Dave Steinborn.
Nice.
Cool. Chris, where can they find you your work, sir?
So my website is cbrimmage.com, and then you can also find me on Instagram at Chris_Brimmage_author, and then on TikTok it's the reverse. It's author_Chris_Brimmage. So I guess not technically the reverse, but the author switches places.
I got to follow you on TikTok. I didn't know you're on TikTok.
Yeah.
Cool. Ailer, where can they find you and your work, sir?
Right now, I have an Instagram. That'll be Ailer Art00, and my Facebook page is Art of Ailer. Yeah. on Facebook.
All right, cool. Mr. Rosario.
UnstoppableComics.com. You can find all of our social media links on that website, so make sure you check us out there. But aside from that, yes, I am launching my latest Kickstarter next Saturday. And the weekend after that, I will be in Awesome Con in DC. And I think it's booth 980. So come check me out over there. And I will also be at New York Comic Con this year. So it is our first time back at the convention since prior to the pandemic. Can't wait to go back home.
Very nice, very nice. Daphne, where can they find you in your work?
Oh, yeah. Everyone can find me on my main portfolio site at egoworks.com, EGOWRKS, where you can find links to all of my galleries and social media sites. You can also read Ego Raven, Heir of the First Unicorn, for free on my website, uploading every day, Monday through Friday. But if you prefer your fantasy to be more of a furry Lord of the Rings adventure, as you saw in the quick campaign link, you can follow the link over to Tall Tales, TAILS online.com. And not only can you read the first 20 issues of Tall Tales for free, but you can catch up on the latest story arc, Tears of the Mother, which is also currently uploading Monday through Friday. You can also find me here on YouTube at my channel at Daphne Lage, Lager. And I want to thank everybody for finally, after 6 years, getting me over 1,000 subscribers. So I at least want to get that out. So thank you for finally hitting 1,000 subscribers after 6 years. So if you're watching me on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, just press the button. It won't kill anybody.
Yes. All right, and I'm JD Calderon. You can find me here most Sunday nights. You can find me on talltalesonline.com, the Oswald Chronicles on theoswaldchronicles.com. And Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those places under JD Calderon. So that's it. So everybody, thank you so much, guys. All of you were awesome. Please check out those show notes. Everybody's links are in those show notes. Click on those links. Go out there, buy some awesome independent comics. And please, read more comics, especially ours. Thank you so much, guys. All of you. Have a great night.
Later.
Bye.